We continue to cover Security Week's 2019 ICS Cybersecurity Conference. Now in its second day, the conference this morning featured a fireside chat with retired Admiral Mike Rogers, formerly Director, U.S. National Security Agency, and Commander, U.S. Cyber Command. He reviewed the strategic motives of the opposition in cyberspace. Singling out North Korea, Russia, and China, he noted that these adversaries have different motives. North Korea seeks to circumvent the international sanctions that continue to strangle its economy. Russia's goal is basically disruption, with Moscow strongly interested in eroding trust in Western and especially in U.S. institutions. China works in the service of its economic development, and its characteristic activity is intellectual property theft. What they have in common, however, is an understanding of cyber as embodying new military and espionage capabilities, and they use those capabilities in the service of their strategic objectives. So, Admiral Rogers made a case for approaching cybersecurity in the context of national security as a risk management problem, and, he argued, sound risk management should begin with an appreciation of the opponent's strategic goals. When we work through that risk calculus, he emphasized that we inevitably work with constrained financial and human resources. We can't, he said, buy or human capital our way out of the problem. Instead, we need to take risk-based decisions, and to make sure that those decisions are informed by a sound understanding of the opposition's strategy. We have to prioritize what we defend. As he put it, if someone takes down an unclassified website, who cares, really? But if they get into a nuclear command and control system, that's a very serious matter indeed. Just passively responding will place us on the wrong side of the cost equation, Admiral Rogers argued. In any conflict, quote, I want to engage in actions that shape my adversary's choices. I want to drive him to make choices that benefit me. End quote. This is as true in cyberspace as it is in any other domain. He thinks that the future is about building integrated, multidisciplinary teams. As he put it, you can't improvise teams in a crisis. They must be formed in advance and exercised appropriately. If you do this, then you have a proper basis for cooperation, and in a crisis you're so much smarter and faster. A lesson he said he learned from Russian cyber operations in 2016 was the importance of communicating at high levels. He said, quote, we thought that informing the normal working level in the private sector was sufficient. If we were to do it over, we should have taken it to CEOs, CISOs, and not the lower levels. End quote. And of course, effective cooperations for security requires effective information sharing. Admiral Rogers said, the pain of the one has to lead to the benefit of the many. If it doesn't, then the pain of the one is forgotten and is repeated over and over and over again. Discussion of nation-state activity against industrial control systems inevitably raises questions about where responsibility for an appropriate response lies. Admiral Rogers pointed out that a response always starts with a question. Are you confident you know who did this? This isn't easy to determine. False flags are becoming more common, especially since one of the Russians' takeaways from their experience in 2016, running information operations against the U.S., is that they need to cover their tracks. For this reason, and for others, he takes the view that hacking back, as it's popularly called, is a non-starter. Quote, I'm a believer in the Westphalian model, in which the application of force is fundamentally a governmental responsibility, end quote. Drawing upon an example he used in his days at NSA and Cyber Command, he said that if you're the sheriff trying to keep order in a town, the last thing you want is more people walking down the street carrying guns. There's a spectrum of purely defensive actions that private companies can take, but there are, he said, massive liability questions surrounding any of the active measures people talk about. And he closed with an observation about kinetic versus cyber responses. The response to a cyber attack need not itself be a cyber reprisal. Whenever there's a cyber attack, that attack has a physical dimension to it. There's a server, for example, at a specific latitude and longitude. There's a human being at a keyboard. How to respond should be governed in all cases by the traditional laws of war, and how to respond should above all be determined by considerations of proportionality. We'll have more notes from Security Week's ICS Security Conference over the course of the week. One of the most commonly heard bits of security